My apologies. I tried to give control back to the Zoom host and killed the entire panel.
Whoops.
I am really, really sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Did you just get Did you just get the meeting has been ended by the host just now?
Yes, yes. It was an accident.
I thought it was something I said. Sorry.
I think you just dumped our audience.
Possibly so, yeah.
Oh, whoops.
I will let them know that it's back up.
Well,
Just turned from a panel to a chat.
Right. It's now a coffee clutch.
This is really good coffee. I wish I could share it.
That's like,
I have
oops,
excellent
we
coffee
just
too.
dropped the crew out the airlock.
Very dramatic.
Well, I mean, the upshot is that you're in gallery view on the Twitch stream now.
Well, there you go.
Okay, it looks like we're getting a couple of people back. My apologies. This is not my day. I'm just going to sit here and not touch anything. Please carry on.
Okay, there was a question in chat from one of the viewers that has gone away now. It was about the Pliocene exiles.
Yeah, the Julian May's Many-Colored Land.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with this one. If you guys are, please feel free to sound off as folks come back in. Maybe whoever asked that question will be able to see us talking about it. Yeah.
I read it, but it was not to my taste. I read a couple of volumes of it, and it was not to my taste. So I don't know whether it became more epic as it went along, but you could classify it as an epic because it did involve, eventually, I think they flooded the entire world and created the Mediterranean Sea. But I did not feel close to any of the characters, and it was not to my taste. So my judgment, even though I read it, my judgment is probably not as good as someone who read it and liked it.
All right. Anybody else on the panel having read it or familiar with it?
Which one is this again?
Julian May's The Many-Colored Land.
Oh,
and it's
I tried to get into that. I got the impression it was epic. It was not to my taste, alas.
I remember the covers vividly, but I'm afraid I don't. I think I actually owned them, but I don't think I've actually read them. So this is helpful, isn't it?
All right, so another one just popped up from Rose, it looks like. What about works in which there are non-epic characters wandering around in what could be an epic world, like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern kind of situation?
Oh, sort of like the Big Lebowski?
There you go.
That's a non-epic character wandering around in a film noir world.
You know, it's quite interesting because often there are books about an epic character wandering around in a boring, mundane world by accident. I mean, that's also a very viable sort of concept for a novel, and I think it works quite well. I don't know, yeah.
I would say works in which there are non-epic characters wandering around in an epic world, that entirely depends on who is writing it and how good a writer they are.
Yeah.
It could work wonderfully and it could fall flat as a pancake.
I think that books that are successful artistically as opposed to commercially necessarily, they bring something new to high fantasy or to whatever. You know, Lord of the Rings was nothing like that when that was written, or George Martin series. That was against the grain of what we expected. He did not start out with an attractive farm boy who's visited by a wizard and then, you know, teams up with two dwarves, a dragon, a unicorn, you know. in my trilogy, the middle book, The Dragons of Babel, my first book, I'm Dragon's Daughter, had been called an anti-fantasy, which I thought was kind of strange because I love fantasy and I thought that was what I'm writing. So I said, well, let's write an anti-fantasy. And I got John Clute to write out for me all the stages of his theory of what a fantasy is. And then I said, okay, I'm going to break every rule there is there. So the land is wasting away because the king is missing. And I said, okay, the land's doing great because there's no king, because I'm a democracy. I'm a Democrat, you know. I believe in democracy. And I did a lot of stuff like that, but there's like one small touch in there which made me happier than everything. In her essay From Elfland to Poughkeepsie, Ursula K. Le Guin said that you couldn't set a fantasy in Poughkeepsie, which Rachel Pollack proved absolutely wrong. And she also said that you couldn't have a transistor radio in fairy in a high fantasy. So at one point in my fantasy, I have the characters in a crowded train car on his way to the Tower of Babel, and somebody switches on a transistor radio, and the music that comes out is so beautiful. It sounds like the music that the stars danced to on the first morning of creation. And he says, "What is that?" And somebody says, "It's Take the A Train" by Duke Ellington. And I wrote that, and I was just hopping. I was hopping because I had finally managed to come up with music that would fit that description.
Nice.
Rose's question is interesting to me because if you look at it in a sort of metafictional sense, there's actually always a non-epic character wandering around in your world, because presumably the person who is reading the book is wandering around in the world, and they're probably not an epic character. So in a sense, if you put a non-epic character or a sort of an average Joe, whatever you want to, into an epic fantasy, in a sense, you're just sort of enlarging the world a little bit to include or drawing somebody into the world as a sort of, in order to react more intimately or more personally with the world you created. So in that sense, I think in a way it's just an extension of the reader itself.
It's like
Very
Sam
meta. I just said it was very meta. You also just called the reader basic, but that's good. Go ahead, Barbara.
I think that the reader, I mean, by basic in this case, I mean that the reader is not a wizard, dragon, prince, etc. Or
yourself, man.
Oh, you are? Yeah. I
know?
tried to be a few times, but I ended up writing a book because I couldn't actually be that thing.
So I wonder, like, kind of down that vein, if you have like average Joe wandering around in some clearly epic setting, and they're also sort of the main character or the person you're following through that universe, don't they have sort of an obligation to become sort of epic or main character-y as a result of their ability to influence things?
Well, the classic example of that is Sancho Panza. He's following this complete lunatic around the countryside. Don Quixote thinks he's in an epic, and Sancho Panza is going, "No, you're just delusional, sir."
Right.
But actually,
I don't think Sancho Panza ever turns into an epic character, although I think he does end up commanding a village or something.
Yeah. No, it's in Lord of the Rings. That's Sam.
Yeah, that's Sam.
Frodo starts out as a likable everyman, and he turns into an epic hero by the end. And the more heroic he gets, the less interesting he becomes. But Sam is there with him, being normal and cooking dinner.
That is one of the things I liked about The Lord of the Rings, is that Tolkien made sure to explain where everybody's getting their food from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think in general, the goal always, and I think, Barbara sort of hit on this, that you have to care about the characters. Like it's not so much whether they're epic or not epic. It's, does the reader care? Have you created a kind of character that your reader is invested in? And then you have to balance the intimate, like the friendships, the day-to-day with the grand, which is the world. So I think it takes both of those elements to create a successful story, whether it be epic or not, but specifically for the epic when it comes to like world building.
A comment in chat, an interesting concept, the inverse relationship between heroic and yes.
Well, that goes with the whole business of dark heroes and bright heroes. Is most people think that bright heroes are dull. Everybody is more interested in Mr. Spock than they are in Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Everybody's more interested in Batman than they are in Superman. Because it's hard to make a bright hero interesting.
Right, yeah, and you have, like, in that particular example, like, you always know what Superman's gonna do, right? Like, you present him with a problem and you know how he's going to react because he's not a complicated person. He doesn't have a lot going on under the surface in the comics. Some of the older ones certainly, but somebody like Batman, who they may respond in a very different way depending on the circumstances that led them to that decision point. And it may be, hey, my family is more important than the whole community at this point for some reason, or what, it results in different, more interesting and less predictable decision trees, I think.
Well,
and I think that's why. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, SP.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say the way to make a bright hero not boring is, in fact, by darkening the hero. So the more little pieces of darkness are in the character, the brighter the bright bits will seem as well. So in that sense, I think that none of you're all self-respecting writers. You probably haven't written somebody as pure and totally boringly good as the sort of ideal version of Superman. And even Superman started to get faults after a while because he needed them to have an interesting story.
Exactly.
And I think epic fantasy has really. Oh.
Okay. Somebody pointed out that they preferred Kirk, and of course, what was done with Kirk was he was made a little bit of a rascal, which is the other way of making the hero interesting.
Sure.
But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think why A Song of Ice and Fire was so successful and is that it changed what we expect of an epic fantasy hero, that they no longer have to be that farm boy visited by a wizard on a quest. You can write an epic fantasy with these complicated characters that are sometimes light and sometimes dark, that are embroiled in politics, that are not true. There's no clear line between good and evil. And so it's sort of changed, I think, the expectation of what we see in contemporary epic fantasy, because now you have R.F. Kang writing, the Poppy War, and you have Fonda Lee writing Jade City, and S.A. Chakraborty writing Kingdom of Copper. And so you have all these new epic fantasies that are coming out that have changed the model of what it looks like to write an epic fantasy, and what a hero looks like, and what our expectations are.
And those are not, that didn't start recently. I'm thinking of Lord Fowl's Bane, which I couldn't read because they tried to make the central character so dark that he was repellent. He was repulsive.
I like The Black Company by Glenn Cook.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the first novel, such a great premise. It's a group of mercenaries. They're in this fantasy war, and they found out before the novel begins, but too late to do anything about it, that they signed up for to fight for the bad guys. They're on the wrong side, and all they can do at this point is fight to survive. They're not fighting to win because the people they're working for are hideous demons. And it was just such a delightful switch. I think that all really, really good fantasy in some way or other just changes your expectations.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a couple of minutes left. One of the ones that I was just thinking of as you guys were going through this was, for all its faults, the Enterprise prehistory Star Trek show. Captain Archer starts off as kind of that bright hero, like he has like these high ideals and he wants to go out there and do daring do, but do it for the right reasons and always stick to his moral compass. And as they progress into the zone of whatever the ancients built, the sphere area, he starts having to make some really, really dubious moral calls in order to protect humanity, protect the people that are on the ship, protect, like he's stealing warp engines from other people and leaving them stranded and, making really, really questionable calls for the greater good. And I think it made him a demonstrably more interesting and compelling character as he started getting into those darker areas and trying to have to deal with those demons that he was creating for himself. So that said, we do have about 4 minutes left. I'm not seeing any new questions coming in. Any other thoughts that the panelists have on epic settings, epic stories?
I'd love to know what everyone's reading right now. Like what's the last sort of epic fantasy that you enjoyed or that caught your attention that maybe we can recommend to the viewers?
I'm about 2 pages into N.K. Jemison's epic fantasy. The Shattered, I forget the title.
The Broken Earth trilogy?
The Broken Earth trilogy. So I can't say nothing substantive about it. After a couple of pages, it's good.
Everybody else? Barbara, what are you reading?
When I am writing, particularly when I'm writing first draft, I cannot read anything deeper than a bottle cap. So what I am reading now is the pillow book of Sei Shonagon, which is basically a blog from 11th century Japan. And I haven't read an epic fantasy in probably 20 years simply because I've been working hard and it's been hard to concentrate on something that epic.
SB?
I'm reading something that is definitely epic fantasy, though it has very little to do with our genre, because the Jataka tales, the 560 lives of the Buddha, each one approximately 560. Some of these are as complicated as an entire epic trilogy, but basically in each of these stories, which are somewhat traditional and the volumes kept being added to, but each story is supposedly a story that the Buddha told his disciples about a life that he lived in the past. And they always end with a lesson that he learned. And in some of these stories, he's born on Earth as a dragon, and an evil sorcerer captures him and by playing a magic flute and puts him in a bag and makes him go and dance in villages. And then he's freed by a big magic duel between him and his brothers. And each one is weirder than the last. So it's in fact an incredible source for anybody who wanted to see a new viewpoint of fantasy. But the reason I'm doing this is it's actually research material, because I'm writing a series of 10 operas based on the last 10 lives of the Buddha. So even though I'm not officially reading epic fantasy, I actually sort of am rather sort of drowning in it.
Nice. All right, we're down to a minute.
I just asked Michael.
That's
Oh no, he's reading the Broken Earth trilogy.
Right?
Okay.
What are you reading, Paul?
I just picked up the new Dresden book. I'm not sure it's epic or not, but it's certainly amusing.
I'd also throw in there the Three Body Problem by he is a fantastic writer. He's very big scale, has the world's most depressing ending and message. But it's exhilarating. I remember when I read the first volume, I was going, ideas. I remember those.
Cool. Well, I think that's about it for time. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for jumping in and participating, and both panelists and attendees. I hope you had a good time. And I'm sure folks will be hanging out in Discord if you'd like to chat with us. Also, buy books, check it out, see what you think.
My books, yes.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you next round.
Okay.
So where's the con suite?
There's are you familiar with the Discord application?
Not yet.
Okay, there are some links in the emails. I may be able to find one if they don't shut this down right away.
No, let me just go back to my emails. I'm sure I'll find it.
Okay.
Because yeah, but thanks a lot. I've been having trouble getting online, getting onto this, but now I'm here, so I should.
Yep, a lot of different tools to play with.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, great.
Thank
See
you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Rose.